Hello. Hello everyone. Welcome to Art House Asia. This is our another Q&A with a short filmmaker and definitely a feature filmmaker. His documentary feature is also will be shown on Sunday. And so this film Gumnaam was premiered at Berlinale last year, and I think exactly 1 year after we are kind of showing the film to Kolkata audience, and I had a privilege to watch it during Berlinale. So and it was fantastic, and I feel so proud to see this film from India uh, there.
Mm.
Uh, uh, so Ekta, thank you for joining us. So my first question is that you have been running this collective Mara for long,
Yeah.
for how many years?
I co-founded it with two of my very close friends and colleagues in 2008 in Bangalore. Yeah.
Okay. So it's been, I think, 13 years that it's
Yeah.
running. Okay, and like with this foundation and like in your film, you have been working for this uh, class of people, and which is also the subject of your film. So um,
Yeah.
how did how did this thing, you thought that okay, I should be making films about this subject, because with Bira and Gumnam Din, they are kind of, that like they are also kind of extended stories of each, two types, but still it's extended, connected. And it's good
Mhm.
to know and see that the filmmakers filmography is so strong and they are dedicated to this subject. So what was your
Yeah.
take on that?
I mean, the whole film project itself started in 2009, around the same time that I set up the collective with my colleagues, because we were involved in quite a lot of protests in Bangalore, and I think we were kind of standing against the construction of the metro because many families were getting displaced and many trees were getting cut, etc. And as a result, we realized that uh, the anger and frustration was kind of almost seeing bringing out the worst in us. So we thought we might as well turn to cinema and turn to the people who are coming into the city to build the metro. So we made three films under the project Behind the Tin Sheets, me and my colleague Yashu. And after which, I kind of felt like my journey with migrant workers was just scratch on the surface, and I really needed to understand it much more deeper. I wanted to understand where they were really coming from. So I kind of went back to some of the friends I had made in Bangalore. So I went back to Chhattisgarh, then Punjab. I went to Bihar and met some of the workers' families, and that kind of opened up a whole different world for me. And it just kind of culminated into Birha, which is again none of my films. I felt like there's no point in capturing it like a traditional documentary film where I'm going to tell you what the people were telling me. I felt it was important to capture the essence because many of them spoke of sorrow in very many different ways, separation, loss, grief, death. And I just felt like it was important to stay kind of try deeply to understand that emotion of losing someone really close to you. When someone goes missing in your family, what does that really mean? These are not fractures or things that you can ever get over in some ways. And so how do you show this perpetual kind of situation where someone is waiting for a son who she doesn't know if he's going to return or not? So I had to kind of think about new ways of representing or thinking about the different kinds of stories I heard along the way. So yeah, that's how Birha came, and thankfully I stumbled upon Shiv Kumar Batalvi's poetry, which kind of gave me a good hook to kind of think about even filmmaking in that sense, or like think about the metaphors in his poems. Kind of give me a way to go in a totally different route rather than treat them as subjects or treat them as people who I could just be like, this happened with this person in this location, etc. So yeah, and Gumnam Din is a poem by Shiv Kumar Batalvi. So it's kind of like an ode to him also.
Okay. Yeah, yes, like um, like when I saw it, and also with my experience of
Yeah.
watching documentary films and programming for last 7 years, that I feel that now the documentary filmmaking has changed extremely, like
Mm.
for last couple of years,
Yeah.
and I prefer to call Gumnaam Din or Birha not a documentary, but particularly non-fiction, because it is
Mm.
somewhere it is
Yeah.
also, you are fictionalizing with the rhythm of poetry,
Mm.
especially in Gumnaam Din. And
Yeah.
so again, coming back to the film, that what I saw in Gumnaam Din, the most important part was, the rhythm. The rhythm came out from two things. One is, I think, the editing, and
Yeah.
another is sound. So
Yeah.
like when you are shooting a documentary, generally, my question is two part. Like one is that generally it is a small crew. Is it true for you also that it was a small crew, and how you create that
Absolutely.
magic after that,
Yeah.
like of this sound and editing images. So what was the team, and tell me the answer of the both the
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. I am very fortunate to work with very close friends of mine. So both my camera people, I mean, are very good and very old friends. Parumita and Amit, both of them were on the shoot. Abro is again someone who we work with for all our films. So he's someone who we know very, very closely. And also, like, I think the relationship that you build with your editor or your camera people or your sound people is kind of also like a very deep friendship where a kind of a different a communication starts to happen between us. So I think when we were shooting, the narrative started to was quite clear in my head that I wasn't going to do it in a linear way. There will be many segments which will be very quiet. I knew that I wanted to shoot it in particular seasons. I knew the metaphors that I was interested in, kind of really trying to get for the film. And to come back and meet Abro with all the footage and being like, okay, now we need to piece this together because it's a fragmented narrative. It's not, I didn't want to do it in like sections based on locations or like chapters which kind of spoke about different kinds of separations. We wanted to keep this flow of we wanted to try and see if there could be any kind of emotional continuity that we could build through all the different people that I met along the way. And I think that the way in which we approached the editing was also to kind of spend a lot of time talking about these different contexts and how it relates to some of the things that we were searching for within the poems or searching for within the narratives of separation. So a lot of conversations happened, and I think it was long sittings between Abro and me, looking at the footage also and seeing like, okay, we didn't want to naturally kind of correlate one story with the other, but as we were editing, we could see connections. And it didn't matter if we were in Punjab or Chhattisgarh or in Hyderabad, but what was more important is what someone was saying or what someone was doing in the frame, and how that could connect to something else that's happening somewhere else. So in a way, it's a flow between various different people who are all actually coming from the same gharana or from the same mahol, which we wanted to believe was a village called Birha, or a space that kind of brings all these different people together with different kinds of stories. And because, for example, in Gumnam Din and in Birha, the missing person is there are we kind of try to create some logics for ourselves, which is to say that there were many people in Bangalore who we met who are very who have already got whose parents think that they've gone missing, but actually I've met them here. They don't know how to go back home. So some people want to go missing, some people are missing, some people on the verge of missing. So really this idea of the missing person becomes quite mysterious. And I think the footage did allow us to kind of find that missing person or give that voice to the missing person in some way without just going to the police station and showing a photograph of the missing person. So we tried to kind of look at some of these aspects which were unreal, haunting, and try to bring out those things to the fore. And of course, even with the sound, I think a lot of the sound design was again Vidya. It was very important for them to also understand that this is not like a standard documentary where I have these characters, we're following the characters, and we're so it really had to work with the mood and the kind of emotion that we wanted the audience to feel when they are watching the film. So yeah, I think it was really looking at not necessarily working with things we heard on on the locations, because all the locations that we shot in are extremely noisy, and the film is more quiet and much more needed a much more quiet, more haunting kind of a soundscape. So that's how we went on with it.
Yeah, like you kind of like was about to kill my another question, but like you saved it. The question was that like all this question has also two part. One is that I was also in Bangalore, and many of my friends like who are kind of privileged enough to not work in the the construction sector of those cities,
Mhm.
the growing
Yeah,
cities,
yeah,
but they are also
yeah.
migrant, and
Hmm.
like I think the like from like, I am from Kolkata, and I went to Bangalore to studying engineering, and just like many other people, and
Hmm.
when we were there, and except me, nobody came back. Everyone stayed in different cities, and I
Hmm.
think in the entire generation is living outside
Hmm.
from there they, as a migrant, and even though if they are not missing, they are still missing from their lives, from their like parents life, family life, and they are creating, they are building their own life there. So and these cities, when they are there, their life is especially chaotic with many other things but happiness. So I genuinely felt it, and that was my point of coming back and saving myself from that chaos. And so,
Hmm.
like what was why? So that is this is my question then. Like why you have chosen a very quiet approach with this thing while they are. I can understand the rhythmic part, but also my thing is why not in some point? Why don't you show the chaotic essence of their part as a migrant worker, or that's why don't you explore that, or it yeah, so that's my question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've consciously stayed away from that representation also because, I mean, especially after this lockdown, I think when the migrant worker takes center stage and everybody has just suddenly risen to this moment that, wow, there were so many migrants in our cities and our state governments didn't know it. And, it's just like a unrecorded history of the city in some sense. And I think for us, at least for me, when I say us, I'm talking about our earlier films. The first three short films we worked on kind of also wanted to move away from the standard representation of showing this kind of chaos that the worker was already stuck in many contexts, etc. But we wanted to kind of work on different tropes, which the worker also was inhabiting, whether it was a conversation about love, whether it was a conversation about sexuality, whether it was a conversation about the idea of feeling. We made a film that really looked at only ghost stories actually, which is quite interesting because we're looking at the worker, the metaphor of a ghost that kind of ties in very closely with the migrant worker because they have when they come and when they leave, nobody knows. And the way in which they live in the city, it's quite dark, it's quite ghostly. And there's a part of me that strongly feels that the image of the worker should be just as mysterious as his presence in the city. We don't ever see, it's not just about invisibilizing him, but I think it's to kind of maybe make the audience feel more curious, more unsettled that what the hell is this and is this really happening in our city? And it is. And I think if we are curious or if we can push ourselves a little further, we should, because usually the thing is, biographical details, what happened. And I just feel like these sketches of people where they tell us where they come from, what they experienced in the city, mostly terrible things. I don't want to show that. anymore, because I just want it to be as I want us to feel estranged also. It's because the workers feel so estranged, and I wanted to carry that estrangement and alienation that they feel to also be transposed to the viewer, because this alienation is something that we are all are responsible for. We've constructed it by inhabiting and choosing our lives in the city. How do we kind of account for these moments of alienation? Because, for example, many things are very, I mean, I have shared beautiful moments with a lot of the people in these films. Like, I've eaten the best food with them. They have beautiful rituals. They speak very lovingly about um, the homes. And at the same time, I feel that there are some things that really move them and that have stayed with them, and they're unable to forget. And I think Birha and Gumnam there in some ways is trying to really account for those things that somehow you can never explain to anyone in some words. The time might have passed, but some of those memories are very strong and very haunting, uh, and I think should it stays as a record of that thing that is usually supposed to be forgotten about. So whether it is the women wailing, or whether it is how people cope with different kinds of loss. It's not important. That loss is not important in the sense of me describing the loss to the audience member, I think, is one way of approaching it. But another way is to actually state what someone is feeling, and that's what I wanted to stay true to. And it is silent, no, when you lose something, or when you can't explain that separation, which I believe every human being, I think, endures in their life. And it's a silent thing. It's very private. It's not something that we would see in a protest space, for example.
Like, I will ask my next question, which is scheduled here on my paper, but I just want to ask another question that, like, it's a very, I think, a personal one. That do you, do you consider yourself as a migrant or as missing, or like, or you don't?
It's a really interesting question because I always thought, I always believe in this idea of being rooted, and I do live in Bangalore. I've been living here, and I spend most of my life here. And at the same time, there is over time the way the city has changed, and the way things around me have changed. It's become very unfamiliar to me. So I've started feeling quite rootless in in Bangalore, and I think my travels to other places, I have this strong desire to keep traveling, and I have, I think, a nomadic side to me, and I kind of like anonymity, and I also feel that there is a I like to come back home, but I don't know if I can stay here, like, the whole time. And I think I'm curious enough to leave every so often. So yeah, in many ways, I think I go missing in many people's lives, and but I return, and in some people's lives I may not. So yeah, I think this idea of the missing figure is, I think, for us to reflect on. Of course, there's a very real implication to this also, because to have someone go missing in your life is quite a poignant thing to kind of think about, because you don't know if that person is dead or alive. And at the same time, I think metaphorically it could apply, I think, to many of us who are actually not being able to be present, or we're not able to stay with one thing too much. So either it's the times we live in, or the kind of environments, the kind of political situation that has made us, the way we are. And I think it's good to acknowledge that, and I think stay true to this kind of anonymous identity, because I certainly don't believe in being identified as something, or with some place, or with a nation, or any of these things. So it just becomes very complicated, this question of identity. And now the word migrant itself has so much of baggage. I think it's a really useful thing to keep returning to it, and thinking about what do we mean when we say migrant workers. And yeah, so in that sense, I think my privilege allows me to uh, come and go, stay and leave, do whatever I wish. I have mobility um, to my to my discretion. I really think I can have the freedom to do whatever I wish to do, to work where I want, to make films. And in that sense, I would just say I'm a rootless cosmopolitan, uh, much less a migrant.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Like I feel kind of same that I like after even after coming back to Kolkata, I never felt that like I'm rooted to this here because things have changed and things are constantly changing and sometime with work you cannot really connect with getting rooted with that cause. So my next question, Ekta, is that like Ekta, like I have been following your work for last couple of years and what I understood that you are not just a filmmaker but also like you are a uh, if I don't know if I am saying the correct word, maybe activist, or or definitely someone who is who has some like who wants to make a change. Maybe a change maker will be a right word. Like and
Yeah,
and and then you have chosen cinema as a medium to reflect on your personal inner struggles and whatever you want to change and like I'm just quoting Stalin here that when they found out cinema and they said this is the this is what's the most influential mass media and and from then onwards everything about cinema got changed and it has become a industry and it has like money making machine for some people and for others it is just a struggle. So as an activist when you are taking cinema as a medium to show your work to work, so like why cinema, and does this baggage is affecting your activism or your role as a change maker?
I think for me, it's kind of an extension of one another, and I think that my work as an activist or as somebody who's just interested in raising questions, because there are many things that are happening around us which are extremely disturbing, and it is unable for me to just watch it pass by. I, I can't. It's unable to process it without saying something about it. So in that sense, I do think it has taken different forms in my own journey, my work journey, and I think that cinema and activism, I don't want to look at them as two separate things in a way. Of course, there are different sets of questions that, or different ways in which we may be able to raise certain questions in both of these kinds of places, but I still feel it's something that I feel they are mirror images of each other. And I do believe in activism, there should be space for other identities also. The role of the activist doesn't have to just have one face or this one kind of image. And I think just because one speaks about, I mean, very often from the left, one has been asked this question, where is where is the struggle, and where are the usual questions that you hear of workers, right? The idea is not to say that, not to disrespect that, and I think to be aware of that socio-political context, but at the same time try to see how we're constructing these identities and what is the politics of this representation, right? And I'm not saying I've answered that question through my films, but I think it's a long search. And I think being in sync with staying with this issue of workers for the last 12 years has given me some ideas of what we could have done with the camera, how could we think about certain things differently. The camera and sound helps us to rethink some of our positions in the activist kind of spaces where you are supposed to perform and behave in a particular way. So I feel like there are learnings from one place at both places, and one informs the other. And I think the whole point is to be more humble, more aware of our privilege, and more sensitive and careful about how we go on to practice whatever we are practicing, whether it is asking questions to authorities who are really making the workers feel extremely vulnerable. And how do you go about doing that? It's not like we won't be present in that space, but it's very crucial to know what our roles are and how we are being perceived, and what our relationships are with the people we meet along the way. So for me, I do look at them um, as a part of a longer journey. I don't look at them as two separate worlds in my head.
Okay, so like okay, it was nicely said, and um, like yeah, like though I have some contradiction, and like considering many like activist turned filmmaker or filmmaker turned activist in this particularly in this last couple of years scenario, or even the actors who are turning activists these days, and then
Yeah,
so it has become a very thin line which to cross and not. But like again coming back to the film, like so the very important aspect of your film is also the characters
yeah,
what you
absolutely.
who have shot, and
Yeah.
and they are fresh, they are unveiled, and like they like we can see that we can feel the emotions what they are expressing that time maybe while looking at your camera, uh, like, and if I'm not wrong the camera is done by Paramita Dhar, and like and so my question to you is that how you have chosen them, like what was your process while you are scouting the character, because it's very important, like for this kind of film, especially for these two films that uh, so tell me,
So
yeah.
they're for me not really characters, right? So the good thing is that I kind of stayed in touch with some of the workers who I met in Bangalore when I was making the earlier film. So for example, Parvez, who's in the film, I mean I've known him for 12 years, and we have become very close friends. And he was in Bangalore and Hyderabad and different cities, and he has no idea where his house is. And in Gumnaam, then he actually talks about the address of his house in Bihar, right? And he during the lockdown, he was kind of suddenly looking at all his fellow workers in the labor colony, and he's like, "Shayad mujhe bhi ghar jana hai." And so it was very interesting. Last year, we tried to see if it's possible to find him. It was a really like a shot in the dark. I'm just giving you an example of one of the people in the film, right? So for Parvez, I've been probably uh, one of the people he's been in consistent touch with over the last 12 years. He hasn't spoken to anyone in his family, and of course, the people in his family think he's dead or has gone missing. These are the two things. So in during the lockdown, he was like, everyone wants to go home, but like, where am I supposed to go? And I don't know if I can go. And he hasn't like so he's been building the metro in Bangalore, Hyderabad, everywhere else. So the thing is, we called the police station, Betia police station, and spoke to them, and we said that there's this boy who went away 15 years ago. Can we find his family, etc., etc., etc. And a long story cut short, like it was like almost a month of us trying to speak to different police stations, constables, ग्राम पंचायत के जो सरपंच थे वहां से and finally we managed to find the contact of his mother and his brother, and they spoke after 15 years. And now it's 1 year after the lockdown. He just managed to go home, like he just was there last week. So finally, he's kind of met his family, and I just feel like these are That's why for me they're not characters. They're really like strong people in my life. I speak to them almost on an everyday basis. I'm in touch with most of the people that we see in the film on a weekly basis. Like not everyone I talk to every day. Parvez is like he calls me up every once in a while. So we're very close friends in that sense. Surinder went missing. Like I thought he went missing because I was not able to get in touch with him after he left Bangalore. He was a very few workers come from Chhattisgarh actually. So when I went to Chhattisgarh, I was looking for him, and I spent 4 years looking for him, and I finally did find him. That was also quite a beautiful story. So in a way, I think that they are friends, and I think they're going to stay in my life for very long. Dadi is again another very 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 significant. I mean, she's a huge influence in my life. I think she also informs the pace of the film, the style of the film, because we spent a lot of time talking. I just didn't land up there with the camera. So I spent 2 years, like in monsoons and winters, hanging out with her, just chatting and spending like deep time. So, not with any particular agenda, but just to know what life could be, for her. Because again, one of her sons has gone missing, one of her sons is working in Bangalore. And I don't know, like, I think there's something about her silence that she's very quiet, a very hardworking woman. And I just was very inspired by how she registers her protest also in a very quiet way. So yeah, so they are very close friends and they continue to remain. They might come in my next films as well. They're not going anywhere. I'll find them otherwise. Yeah,
That's really nice. And let us conclude this session. Like we have a
yeah,
film to play after this. And
yeah. Thank
thank
you.
you, Ekta, for
Yeah,
sharing this film. Thank you
yeah,
for like doing this work with Mara. And
yeah,
we look forward to see many more works. And personally, we shall meet in person
yeah,
very soon,
sure.
maybe in Bangalore.
Yeah,
And so, thank you,
absolutely.
and we wish maybe I don't know, like the jury's decision is still pending.
Yeah,
So I hope that some good news should come for you. Thank you, thank you.
thank you. Thank you very much. Bye. Thank you for showing my film. Bye.
It was our pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.